The contest of champions is just about to begin. Wind and Truth is coming very, very soon. Like, this is the countdown, and I've been excited for this book all year. I don't know about you, and today I just want to discuss some Stormlight Archive theories leading up to Book 5. So this is going to have some spoilers for Rhythm of War, but it's not going to contain any of the preview chapters of Wind and Truth. I didn't read any of those. Besides the prologue, I am going to talk about the prologue for Wind and Truth at one point, and I will mention it beforehand so you can skip ahead if you like to. I'm really looking forward to see what you guys have to say about these theories. And also, if you guys have any theories of your own, make sure to drop them in the comments. Now, leading up to the release of Book 5, I have been hard at work on my Stormlight Archive summaries. If you guys are unaware, I posted my Words of Radiance summary in October, and that video was nearly 3 hours long, and it took a lot of work. Like, I was expecting a spren to come bond to me because I was broken after making that video. It took so long. I worked on it the entire month. And now this month, I've been working on the Oathbringer summary pretty much nonstop. It is going very well, and that video is going to be up by the end of this month. However, I do want to update you guys. The Rhythm of War summary, I'm not going to be able to get that up by December 6th, so that's likely going to go up by the end of December. These videos take a lot of work. I've been like denying sponsors the last few months just so I can focus on getting these videos out, but it is going well. It just takes a bit of time to get these summaries up. But speaking of sponsors, before getting into the theories, this video is sponsored by Into the AM. Have you ever wanted to look stylish like me? Are you looking for high quality clothing with maximum comfort? Well, you're in luck because Into the AM is my favorite clothing brand. I mean, they're like one of my favorite sponsors to work with here on the channel, and they're not telling me to say that. I'm just saying it because I love working with Into the AM. And if you're looking for, graphic tees or even more casual clothing or outerwear, they have some incredible designs and their clothing is always so comfortable. And Into the AM is having their biggest sale of the year with up to 60% off starting this November 13th until December 8th. That's right, it's a Black Friday and Cyber Monday sale, and you're not gonna want to miss it. It is the best time to upgrade your wardrobe or pick up some holiday gifts. Click the link in the description and get an additional 10% off. I really love all their graphic tees. They have so many cool designs. I also really like this new sweater they sent me. I just wanted a nice casual sweater. And these joggers. I think these joggers are actually my favorite product. I'm just gonna stand up. These are so comfortable. I have 2 pairs of them, and yeah, they're like my favorite pants. That was the chair squeaking. I promise. Really highly recommend Into the AM. So again, make sure to click the link for an additional 10% off, and make sure to check out their Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales because that's a lot of savings and you don't want to miss out. Huge thank you to Into the AM for sponsoring the video. Now, the first theory I want to talk about, this is one that I think is 100% true, and it's probably the most talked about theory I've seen on like the Stormlight Archive Reddit in the past 3 years or so, and that is that Shallan's mother is a herald. The theory that Chanarach, or Channa, one of the 10 heralds of the Oath Pact, is in fact Shallan's mother. Channa, known for her bravery and with an honor blade that grants her the Dustbringer surge-binding abilities of division and abrasion. If you haven't heard this one, or even if you did, I'm gonna explain all the details here. There might even be some details you didn't know about. And also, before you say that heralds can't procreate, actually, according to the word of Brandon, heralds can procreate. My advice though, if Nail ever visits you in the night, you should probably just run. Now, we know there are several secret societies and groups on Roshar, and Shallan's mother seems to be involved in some secret groups, at least according to Sanderson himself. And we also know that her father was affected by Odium. And even the Unmade seem to have an interest in the Devar family, and this is pretty much confirmed by Hoyd himself in chapter 45 of Words of Radiance, when he speaks with young Shallan at Middlefest and says, "The things you fight aren't completely natural. Why are there secret groups involved, and why does Odium and the Unmade care about like a minor Light Eyes family in the middle of nowhere? Clearly there's some Cosmere significance going on here, and don't worry, I'm gonna get into the evidence as to why that is. First of all, one of the divine attributes that Chanarach is said to represent is bravery, along with obedience. And one of the few explicit memories Shallan has of her mother is that she was brave. However, Shallan's mother does try to murder her when she discovers her daughter has surge binding abilities. That's not exactly a brave thing to do, but it does align with how the Heralds believe the surge binders to be a sign of the desolations. And it's also the actions of an insane person, and we know the Heralds are going insane. And we do see these insane Heralds that are now specifically acting like the opposite of their attributes. And that kind of fits in with the theory quite well, actually, because the opposite of bravery is cowardice. And I would say it's a pretty cowardly thing to do, to try to kill a little girl, your very own daughter, because you're afraid of going back to Braze and upholding the Oath Pact. I mean, being tortured for 4,500 years is going to take a toll on you, and we've seen how badly the other Herald's sanity was affected by their immortality, and how badly they want out so they never have to return to Braze and face that torture again. We also know that by the end, there were only months between the Desolation cycles, and the Heralds are so incredibly broken and afraid of returning to Braze. So it kind of makes sense that Shallan's mother would call her a monster and one of them, and react so harshly as to actually try to, get rid of her daughter to save herself. After all, if Shallan's mother isn't a Herald, then what would drive a minor Light Eyes on an estate in the middle of nowhere to react this harshly to her daughter? It just doesn't really add up to me. I mean, you could say she's crazy and that's it. But obviously, I think there's more to the story here, and I think she's crazy for a reason, and that's because she's a Herald. But if you're not yet convinced, there is still some more evidence here. Now, in chapter 20 of Rhythm of War, when describing Shallan's radiant persona, it is very, very similar to the physical description of the canonized artwork we have for Chanarach. The skirt was pleated instead of straight. She wore a loose matching coat with a tight vest and shirt beneath. The bright clothing featured vibrant blues embroidered over reds with gold woven between, and it had trim on the skirt. And here on the canonized art of Chanarach, we see that there's gold trim and there's blue and red colors. I feel like Sanderson is adding some small little clues in here that we can slowly pick up on. Now, that isn't all though. Sanderson has said time and time again that Taln never broke. And if Taln never broke, then why did he return? Well, obviously one of the other heralds must have broke, or they were killed. We know that Shallan's mother died in the year 1167, the same year that King Gavilar was assassinated. And also in Words of Radiance chapter 10, we get the line, "The world ended, and Shallan was to blame," referring to her killing her mother. And I mean, what else would end the world but the start of another desolation? And the next piece of information I'm going to share with you guys, this in my opinion confirms that Shallan's mother was the herald that was killed on the same night that Gavilar was assassinated. And unfortunately, in order to talk about this, I do need to mention the prologue for Wind and Truth. So if you don't want to know about the prologue, you can skip ahead to the next theory, but this is very convincing evidence in my opinion, so you might not want to miss out on it. Also in chapter 77 of Words of Radiance, Navani and Shallan are talking about Yasna, and Navani references asking Chanarach to give her strength not to strangle Yasna. And Shallan's mother tried to strangle Shallan, and the heralds are doing the opposite of their attributes. So I feel like this is a very Brandon Sanderson thing to just kind of sneak in there in a throwaway line. In the prologue of Wind and Truth, not only do we see Gavilar in a vision with the Stormfather pick up Channa's blade and take a good amount of time like admiring the blade, but also the Stormfather suddenly cries out in agony and announces that a herald has just died. I mean, what more evidence do you need? A herald died on the same night Gavilar was assassinated, and Shallan's mother happened to die in that same year. I think this is very clear that Shallan actually started the true desolation by killing her mother and sending her back to Braze. Town never broke. Yeah, I'm convinced. I'm gonna be very surprised actually if this theory isn't true. Let me know, come back to this video. Let me know in the comments if any of these theories are true, and let me know which ones aren't true as well. Okay, now we need to talk about the Duel of Champions. We know there is 10 days remaining until the Contest of Champions, and I really don't think, Wind and Truth, I don't think the full book is going to be about the Contest of Champions. I feel like most of it's going to be about the aftermath of that. I'm going to predict the Contest of Champions only last up to the first part of the book, maybe the second part. I don't really think it's going to actually take up that much time in the novel. I think most of the book is going to be about the fallout of that event. I feel like Odium / Taravangian is actually going to come out on top of this, and I feel like the rest of the book is going to be dealing with the aftermath of that. I could be completely wrong, but that's just a feeling that I have. And if the book really is just like a 10-day time frame, I'm actually going to feel a little disappointed because I feel like the characters just need more time to fully realize their arcs, and I don't think that can happen within 10 days. We need some things to continue and to get wrapped up after this contest. Now, Odium's Champion, the one that has 9 shadows representing the 9 unmade. Odium's Champion, I feel like, isn't going to be a new character. If it is a new character, they're gonna have to be very impressive. They're gonna have to, have a huge presence in this final book. I think it's going to be a character we already know, and I feel like it's going to have an emotional impact and surprise to the reader, and it will just have more weight to it if it is a character that we already know. So who is going to be Odium's Champion? There's several theories for this. I'm gonna go over a few of them. One of the more popular theories in the fan base is that young Gavinor is going to be Odium's Champion, and this all kind of stems from one of the death rattles back in the Way of Kings. I hold the suckling child in my hands, a knife at his throat, and know that all who live wish me to let the blade slip, spill its blood upon the ground, over my hands, and with it gain us further breath to draw. However, something that goes against this theory is that in the death rattle, it says the subject was a dark-eyed youth of 16 years. So that's not Gavinor. I mean, it could still be referring to him, but I don't know. I don't really think so. If Odium chooses Gavinor, the son of Aesudan and Elokar, Dalinar's nephew, then I don't really know how Dalinar is going to react, to be honest. He did spare a child in Oathbringer, and that was when he was the Blackthorn. However, that kind of came back to bite him, so maybe this time he would have to actually not spare the child. But this is his very own nephew who he grew closer to in Rhythm of War. So I don't know, maybe this is Odium's plan to get Dalinar to forfeit. Also, it doesn't exactly make sense because if Dalinar decided he wants to save the world, it wouldn't take much to kill Gavinor. It would be a very easy win, even if it was weighed down with guilt. It would be easy to beat a child. What? Now, not much is known about Gavinor's relationship with his parents. He spent most of his childhood with Aesudan, however, and we know that Aesudan ended up going kind of crazy because of the influence of Ashurtmon and Yalignar, the Unmade. And he ended up becoming very scared of his mother, and it left him very timid and quiet. It took him over a year to become more sociable and excitable again, and he doesn't seem to feel as strongly about his mother's death as he does about his father's. And the poor boy, he even thought his mother was evil until Dalinar corrects him and says that she was controlled by evil people and that she loved him. Now, we also see the trauma of his father's death had a long-lasting impact on Gavinor. He kind of takes everything very seriously, even when it comes to playing, and he wanted Dalinar to teach him how to fight so that he can kill Moash. So already we have this vengeance in Gavinor and this kind of darkness, even though it's mostly trauma that he's gone through, and that's very realistic, but maybe this darkness will grow, and maybe somehow the influence of Odium will start whispering in his mind. Maybe Odium has even been talking to Gavinor ever since he lived in the mansion with Aesudan. I do think this theory is interesting. Dalinar does spend a lot of time with his nephew in book 4, and maybe it could be building up to that surprise that he ends up becoming Odium's champion, and I think that would put a lot of strain on Dalinar, and it could cause Odium to win. However, I just don't really see this working out. I don't think this is what Sanderson is building up to. Now, the next champion is probably the most obvious. It's the one that everybody thought of, and that is Moash. Yeah, I think Moash, you know, it's pretty obvious that he could be the champion. I honestly wouldn't be upset with this. Yes, it is obvious, but I feel like Sanderson's been building that up. And yeah, maybe Moash will end up becoming the champion. Now, Moash is now blinded at the end of Rhythm of War. I actually forgot that until I did some research on this video. I completely forgot. But, you know, maybe Odium can grant him something to compensate for his blindness. Maybe he'll be like the Daredevil or something. He'll have sonar. I don't know. Or, you know, maybe Moash is going to be redeemed at some point. That's a whole different theory we're going to talk about later. But let me know, do you think Moash is going to be the champion? And then there is Adolin. Now, many fans think that Adolin could become Odium's champion. I don't really think he will. I just don't think it really makes sense. However, it is mentioned that Adolin was born under the sign of the Nine, which is probably just one of their months or something on Roshar, but that is pretty interesting. How the champion has 9 shadows, the 9 unmade, and Adolin was born under the 9. It does kind of fit. And to be fair, we have seen a bit of darkness in Adolin, especially when we see him kill Sadeas. However, I don't know. I think him killing Sadeas was just him trying to act out justice because their culture wasn't gonna do it. I feel like Adolin was just being a vigilante there, and yeah, it was a pretty dark thing to do, but I don't think it was necessarily wrong, and I feel like Adolin has just proved himself to be more and more relatable and more human throughout the story. I don't see him becoming darker. I feel like if Adolin did have a downward spiral in Rhythm of War, then maybe I would be more interested in this theory. It is pretty clear that he hasn't fully dealt with the fact that his dad killed his mom, so that could come more into play in Wind and Truth, but let me know what you think. Do you think Adolin will be the champion? I just feel like Adolin has more honor to him. I feel like he's more like a golden retriever, and I can't see him becoming Odium's champion. Another possibility is that El could be the champion. Now, El is a fused with horns that was introduced near the end of Rhythm of War. I actually completely forgot about this character, but he does seem like a likely option. At each rebirth, El removes his carapace and replaces it with metal, and the metal heals and integrates into his body through a combination of void light healing and his own unknown abilities. Now, El seems to have a strong interest in humans. At one point, he didn't want humans to be killed, and he wanted to instead unite all of Roshar under fused rule for a future war. As punishment, his rhythms and title were stripped from him, and prior to this point, he had the title Vyre, which translates to He Who Quiets. When El returns during the True Desolation, he once again begins studying human art from the time he was on Braze. He also writes a Ketic to celebrate the return of the sibling. And El appears to have increased in favor when Taravangian killed Reyes and took up Odium. He likes that Taravangian was recently one of the humans that he admires. And after Lesian's death in Urithiru, Odium accelerates his return to give El a suitable subject for testing anti-void light. Personally, I think El is... I think he could be building up to being the champion for sure. But of course, let me know who you think is the champion. A lot of people seem to think that Renarin could be. Let me know your thoughts on that as well. Now, whoever the champion is, I have a strong feeling that in order to build up tension, Odium is going to win the contest, and that would mean that Odium gains control of Elithkar and Dalinar's soul. Dalinar would become immortal, but he would be forced to serve Odium, and Odium would still be bound to the Rosharan system. I feel like this would have a massive impact on the characters, as they'd have to figure out how to free Dalinar, if that's even possible, or Dalinar from his end is gonna have to find some weakness to take advantage of. Let me know who you think is going to be Odium's champion in the comments, but speaking of Dalinar, we have some more Dalinar theories to discuss. Now, I remember back when I was first reading the Stormlight Archive, I had this idea that Dalinar would end up becoming the Stormfather, and you know, we'd see just like Dalinar's head in the storm. I don't know why. I had that idea, and I thought that was my first theory that I had for the Stormlight Archive. I don't really think that's gonna happen anymore. However, I do think that Dalinar could become Honor. I believe that Honor is going to become unsplintered, and that Dalinar is going to be the one to do that. Now, also with the theme of unity, I feel like possibly he's actually going to maybe blend Cultivation and Honor together and become something new. I don't know. Or even Honor and Odium, maybe? Wait a minute, I just thought of that. Maybe because like Dalinar does kind of represent Honor, and then the Blackthorn, Odium. Maybe he'll combine them together. I don't really have any evidence to support this theory, but and to add to this, if Dalinar loses the contest and is now a servant to Odium, then possibly from this position, he's gonna find a way to unsplinter Honor and combine it with Odium to become a shard of war. Dalinar will then wage war against Roshar and possibly the entire Cosmere if he manages to break free of the Rosharan system. We'd see the Blackthorn, but cranked up to 1,000. Now, while this would be a massive twist, the one thing that makes me think this won't happen is that it would just feel like a waste of Dalinar's growth and his redemption that he's gone through. But whatever happens, I truly think that Odium is not going to be the main antagonist of the series after the contest, or at least not when we jump to book 6. To me, it just makes more sense for Sanderson to introduce some new big bad right before the end of book 5, and then that's going to be the main villain for books 6 to 10. And this kind of transitions me to the next theory, that Cultivation is not to be trusted. Now, I don't know if she will necessarily be the main villain, but I do know that I don't trust Cultivation, and neither should you. As I've been working on my summary for Oathbringer, I came across this line from Hoyd where he mentions that those who claim to see the future are not to be trusted. And this is a sentiment that kind of pops up every once in a while, and clearly Sanderson is building up this idea for some reason. And well, Cultivation is capable of seeing the future, with Honor mentioning that she's much better at it than he ever was. Not to mention, Cultivation has never gotten along with Hoyd, and that could kind of be a red flag. Cultivation's intent as a shard appears to be related to transformation, and according to Odium, all she wishes is to change, regardless of where it leads. But in her own view, on the other hand, she wishes to grow things and people, and prune them if need be, to shape them into a desired form. She tells Dalinar, "I control all things that can be grown, nurtured. That includes the thorns." Now, Cultivation's vessel is a dragon, and I mean a godlike dragon as a villain just makes sense. And we do know she has some significant power behind her. I mean, Cultivation appears to have the ability to kill, or at least seriously wound Odium, as he refrained from killing the Stormfather out of fear of leaving himself exposed to her counterattack. And of course, there's also the old magic, and this appears to only be usable by Cultivation and the Night Watcher. It allows for granting another person a boon and a curse based on their request. Now, she granted Taravangian the fluctuating amounts of compassion and intelligence, and ultimately she groomed him to take up the shard of Odium, which required compassion, and to master its intent, which required the intelligence. She altered Lift's surge binding so it was powered by lifelight rather than stormlight, though we don't exactly know Lif's boon and curse. She also intervenes when Dalinar came to see the Night Watcher and begged for forgiveness, and instead of this, she erased all memories of his wife, which served as both a boon and a curse. And unlike with all the other boons and curses, Dalinar's memories gradually returned after the arrival of the Everstorm. And this was deliberately engineered by Cultivation in order to give him time to come to terms with his past before Odium would try to use him to turn Dalinar into his champion. Cultivation has been pulling the strings behind the scenes, but it's very unclear exactly what her motives are. We do know that she and Honor were romantically involved, and following his death, Cultivation appeared to grieve and go into hiding. However, Sanderson has mentioned that he would disagree with this, that she went into hiding, and that this is what people in world would assume. This sounds to me like Cultivation wasn't hiding, she was actually planning. So all of her manipulating and scheming and whatever her goal is, it's all going to come to a head in Book 5. Next up, we need to talk about Adolin restoring Maya. Adolin has always had a special relationship with his shard blade. He's treated it with a lot of respect even before he began to awaken Maya. And ever since Kaladin and Shallan both revealed their powers to him, Adolin has kind of been overshadowed by so many around him becoming Radiants, even admitting to himself that he feels useless at times. Now, personally, I actually kind of like that Adolin is one of our only non-Radiant protagonists, and I'd like to see it stay that way. But I also really enjoy the plotline with his dead spren Maya, and it seems very likely that Sanderson is building up to Maya being fully revived and bonding to Adolin. Sanderson has also mentioned that sometimes people that very strongly resemble the Oaths, they have extra perks when they become a Radiant. So I kind of feel like Adolin is going to be one of these people. I think he's going to have extra perks. Now, it's heavily hinted at that the capture of Beato Mishram is the primary reason why Deadeyes exist. There were no Deadeyes prior to the Recreants, and some of Kelek's epigraphs reference this. I was there when Beato Mishram was captured. I know the truth of the Radiants, the Recreants, and the Nahal Spren. I tell you, I write it. You must release the captive unmade. She will not fade as I will. If you leave her as she is, she will remain imprisoned for eternity. As one who has suffered for so many centuries, as one who it broke, please find Mishram and release her, not just for her own good, for the good of all Spren. For I believe that in confronting her, we have caused a greater wound to Roshar than any ever realized. Now, I've come to the theory that Adolin is reverse bonding Maya through living the ideals that he can't swear yet. Not to mention, Cultivation Spren are all about remembering / speaking for the forgotten. I will remember those who have been forgotten. I will listen to those who have been ignored. Adolin is pretty much living and acting these oaths out for Maya, so he's kind of doing things in reverse. He's been able to at least partially revive Maya and give her back her consciousness, but I feel like the only way to fully revive her is if Beato Mishram is freed. Okay, next theory, we need to discuss Kaladin dying. I have seen so many people say they think that Kaladin is going to die in Book 5, that he's going to sacrifice himself heroically. And sure, I could actually see this happening. I think we're going to get some major character death in this book that's going to build tension and stakes. But, I mean, it doesn't have to be Kaladin. There's not a lot to this theory, to be honest. And honestly, I don't feel like Kaladin is going to die. He was just starting to create the first, therapy group on Roshar, and he started to realize that he can be a Windrunner without being in combat. I think with his PTSD and his fatigue from fighting, it makes sense for him to turn his back on that and to then go back to becoming a surgeon or a doctor. He can learn to help protect others in a different way. And I just don't think he's going to die because his whole arc is about how living is the hard thing and how living and dealing with the pain is something he has to come to terms with. For depressed, sad boy Kaladin, death would be the easy way out, so it wouldn't be a satisfying narrative to just kill him off, in my opinion. However, I do predict we're going to see a final confrontation between Kaladin and Moash. And I think Moash is going to have a moment of regret, and he's going to allow himself to be killed. And let's talk about Moash and what his role is going to play in Book 5. Now, Moash is sort of a foil for Kaladin, and I think he's going to continue to be. He's what might have happened if Kaladin had completely given in to despair and vengeance and had lost all hope. But will Moash be redeemed? Listen, as much as I love the F Moash meme, and as much as I'm disgusted by his actions, I actually think Moash is a really great, morally gray character. Well, really, he's kind of just fully becoming a villain, a very well-written villain. Unfortunately, there are many people in real life that blame their own actions on their culture or those around them, and while they may feel guilt, they don't regret their actions. And this perfectly sums up Moash. But I still think he could possibly be redeemed. Before Rhythm of War, I still had hope he would be redeemed. Even when he killed Elhokar in Book 3, I mean, that action could be in a real sense justified by the belief that Elhokar was a villainous king. And there was a lot of evidence to back up that belief. But then, in Rhythm of War, it seems like Odium's influence took things to the next level, and Moash really crosses the line over to becoming a villain. But even so, I don't actually hate him. I just feel sad for him. Even when he killed Teft, I didn't feel any actual hate for him, just sadness. I mean, I can see how he's been completely and utterly broken, and really, I just kind of feel pity for Moash. Now, he could get a redemption arc. Personally, I don't think he's exactly going to be redeemed, but again, I think that maybe he's going to allow himself to be killed rather than finishing his goal. I'm actually really interested in seeing where his arc goes next. I'm kind of worried though. Like, I'm worried on who he's going to take out next, because I would be traumatized if he ends up killing Renarin or Adolin or something. Now, there's also plenty of theories about where Stormlight's going to go in books 6 to 10. I mean, a lot of people think it's going to involve traveling across the other planets in the Cosmere and mingling amongst gods and shards, and I think that's likely, but really we don't have any clue until we read book 5. And those are all the theories I'm going to talk about today. Let me know in the comments if you think any of these are true or not. Also, share all of your theories as well. I would love to hear them. Also, please make sure to watch my in-depth summaries for the Stormlight Archive. That would mean the world to me. I put so much time into them, especially that Words of Radiance summary and this Oathbringer summary that's coming up. I have never put as much work into a video before, and it was a lot. It was a lot of work, but I hope you guys will enjoy it as well. I touch on a lot of like Cosmere Easter eggs and a lot of small details that you might not have noticed or you would have forgotten by now. So I hope you guys enjoy, and yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you soon. And a big thank you to all my patrons and my channel members. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for the support.